No.
Got a committee report for later in the meeting, but not right now.
Okay.
If you-
I don't see any public, but is there any comment from the public?
You can just announce it.
Okay, and for the record, Terry Birchfield is recusing herself for this portion of the meeting. So if there's no other communications, we can go ahead with the budget presentation. First up is the school budget.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We should have it. Yeah. Yep, there we go. So at the start of every presentation, I always remind our viewing audience what our mission and vision are at the Lunenburg Public Schools. Our mission is to provide all students with the skills, confidence, and passion for lifelong learning so that they may find their own paths to successful careers, active citizenship, and rewarding lives. And our vision is for the Lunenburg Public Schools to be, we are committed to becoming a leader in education by focusing on our values of attending to the personal well-being of our students, providing high-quality curricula and student-centered instruction for deeper learning at all levels, and promoting the development of attributes and skills necessary for continuous learning for all. So a little bit about our budget process and priorities. Our priorities in the development of the FY21 budget were to develop a budget that meets student needs and aligns with the strategy for continuous improvement objectives. And our strategy was developed with 4 main objective areas: transforming teaching and learning, increasing or improving communications and operations, cultivating climate and culture, and equity, access, opportunity, and achievement for all students. These objective areas are a nice crosswalk back to the existing district strategic plan, which was a 5-year plan. So our process this year, we began in August, and in August and September, the district leadership team worked to develop the strategy for continuous improvement and align school improvement plan goals, administrator and teacher evaluation goals to these areas of the strategy, those 4 main areas. In October, the instructional leadership team, and that team is limited to principals, assistant principals, and our director of special services, because those are the administrators that evaluate staff, give feedback on teaching and learning. So the instructional leadership began to develop a 5-year staffing plan that would support student needs and execute the strategy for continuous improvement. Department leaders and building administrators developed the FY21 budget requests focused on highest impact on teaching and learning in alignment with strategy objectives. And then I presented trends in population and student needs with data at the symposium that was held back in October. In November, budgets were submitted to me, and individual meetings were held with each department head and building administrator to review budget line requests, and the leadership team continued to refine the 5-year staffing plan. By December, the 5-year staffing plan was finalized and submitted to the town manager and was incorporated into the 5-year financial forecast, which was presented in January. The 5-year staffing plan was presented to the school committee as identified needs. And in January, the leadership team prioritized the year 1 positions and identified those that were deemed most critical for inclusion in a student needs-based budget proposal. The proposal of the FY21 budget was then presented to the school committee on January 22nd, 2020. So a little bit of historical context and trends, and this is the same data that you would have seen at the symposium, but I thought for anybody who perhaps missed that presentation, it might be helpful to revisit. Just want to make folks aware that in the last 10 years, there have been many, many changes in education. We now have more requirements for reporting data on our students, our employees, our classes, and the classes and how they're linked to the licenses of the teachers who teach those classes. Restraints, discipline, school choice, all data that we have to track and upload and report to the state. There's additional requirements for end-of-year financial reporting. There's increased data collection and reporting even for our grants. We've also seen new ELA math, science, social studies, and our standards for our English language learners all go through a revision at the state level in the last 10 years. We've seen a shift to computer-based testing. The Access test is the test that is administered to our English language learner students to see how they are progressing with language acquisition. And of course, our MCAS test is now an online computer-based test. We've also seen a significant change in the educator evaluation system. Again, a very time-consuming process, even done minimally to be compliant. It requires a lot of time. It requires even more time to use it as an effective tool to shift teaching and learning. Our accountability system has changed. Once upon a time, the Department of Ed, after the MCAS data would be released in the fall, would also release information about each school and a district as a whole. You might recall that districts and schools might have been identified as level 1, level 2, 3, and so on. The accountability model has shifted, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides. We've also seen increased demand for paperwork related to Medicare reimbursement. Some of the services that are provided to our special ed students are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement, but there's a significant workload that goes with submitting all of that. And lastly, the Student Opportunity Act, that new legislation that everybody was counting on to bring money to schools. This legislation requires that all districts submit a 3-year plan by April 1st. And every year, we will have to submit data to demonstrate progress on our plan. These were slides that I shared at the symposium in October. You can see that our English language learner population has increased over time. It's an upward trend. Our low-income student population, again, is an upward trend. Our Title I students really is more likely a function of the availability of reading teachers to be providing services to a number of students. And our special ed population, those who are on IEPs, has maintained a pretty stable percentage. You'll notice too that our out-of-district placements have been decreased, and that's actually a really great thing because out-of-district placements are very costly. So spending some money to create programs in district is actually, in the long term, a very cost-effective move. So we can see that our numbers of free and reduced lunch have maintained themselves. We're not 100% certain that all families feel comfortable submitting the paperwork to identify their financial circumstances to be eligible. So we suspect that the number might be higher than that. The top right-hand slide, you have the blue and red bars. Those are our choice students. The blue are the number of students that are choicing in, and the red, the number of students that are choicing out. And we've done a little bit of data analysis on that, and I think it's important to note that more than half of the ones who are choiced to other districts from Lunenburg were never enrolled in Lunenburg Public Schools. So it's not that they've begun with Lunenburg and then made a decision to choice out. The majority of them actually were never with us. You can see that our total enrollment in the district is starting to display an upward trend again. And another interesting data point is our affidavit of residency. This is when students enroll in our schools. They are not homeowners in Lunenburg. They are not renting a unit in Lunenburg. They are moving in to Lunenburg and staying with extended family or others that they know, and they produce documentation to verify that they are actually living in town. So that last bar is a little bit misleading at this point because that's not a year-end data point. But you can see that the numbers are steadily.
What is the raw number on that, the final block? You can't see it either.
Can't see it.
Okay, don't worry about it.
10, but that was as of October 1st? Yeah. Again, a little bit of expanded data on our enrollment, and we anticipate or project that we will continue to see slight increases over the next 1 to 3 years. Right now, our average class sizes are good. At the primary school, grades K to 2, at kindergarten and second grade currently, the class sizes are 20 to 23. First grade classes are 24 to 25. At Turkey Hill, all grades 3, 4, and 5, class sizes are 24 to 25. And at the middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, again, 24 to 26 in a classroom. It gets a little bit more challenging to get an accurate depiction of class size at the high school because you have multiple courses being offered at varying levels. But the range of the smallest class size of 8 for an advanced placement course to the high-end class size of 28, but when you take a look at the average, it falls somewhere between 18 and 22 at the high school. So this was the accountability piece that I said I would come back to. The new system, there are 2 classifications. One, those schools and districts not requiring assistance or intervention, and those who do require assistance or intervention. Happily, the district and all of our schools fall in the category not requiring assistance or intervention from the state, so that's good news. When we take a look at other benchmarks that are provided in terms of making progress toward improvement targets, and those targets are set for us by the state, when we look at the all students data, we see that the district is making substantial progress. Turkey Hill is making moderate progress, as is the middle school. The high school is making substantial progress. When we take a look at our high needs population, and included in this data point would be our low socioeconomic students, our English language learners, and our special education students, all in this one data point. When we take a look at that, you can see side by side the progress that that subgroup is making is not on par with the all students group. So we know we have work to do there. We know that we are not efficiently and effectively meeting the needs of all of our students
So,
the way
Dr.
that we
Burnham,
should be.
I beg your pardon, but the all-student bar includes the high
subgroup,
needs?
yes.
Okay, so if it's, you can't deduce anything there except that the net with fewer needs is doing better than this would show us, right?
We would have to separate it out to compare data of a high-need subgroup compared to the non-high need subgroup. There are so many levels to which we can disaggregate the data and take a look at it, and we have been doing that. But I think for the overall big picture, to make the point that we have some students that have more significant needs in terms of accessing their learning, that data point tells us that we have some work to do.
And I assume that subgroup, the high need subgroup, is more labor intensive?
Yes.
The accountability percentile,
Yep.
that relates to like districts?
That relates to like schools. They don't give an accountability percentile to districts, just to schools.
Right, okay.
So when you take a look at the middle and high school, good news there. Comparatively, across the state, we are in the top third. However, Turkey Hill is at the high end of the bottom third. Again, we have work to do, particularly at the K-5 level.
Have there been demographic shifts or population changes relative to the high needs population in Turkey Hill that could have anything to do with that?
I don't have
Do you
numbers
have any
ready.
idea what the drivers are for
I
that?
don't have numbers readily available on that, but I do think the shift in the nature of housing available in Lunenburg likely had some impact on that. More affordable housing, families can move in, those who are eligible for support for housing, and additionally, the folks who are moving in to be with family, living in a home with family, unable to either purchase a home or afford a rent on their own in Lunenburg.
Yeah.
So there is work for us to do. So back to that 5-year staffing plan. I won't get into the whole 5-year staffing plan. But when the leadership team got together and thought through what the next 5 years might look like if we were able to execute on those objectives and actions that we outlined in that strategy for continuous improvement. So based on that vision and what we know we need in order to get there, and considering what we know to be our current need, this was the list of positions that they prioritized for year 1. So there are many positions listed there. Some of them are stipended positions, so they wouldn't be new hires, they would be stipends for existing staff. Some of those positions are also part-time, so we would be adding FTEs, not a full FTE. The list that you see there that's highlighted in yellow, those were positions that we identified as need last year as well, but were not funded in the current year budget. I think it's important for the community to know that we have many shared positions in the district. The list on the left-hand side of the slide are all the positions that are shared at the middle high school. On the upper right-hand side of the slide, we have shared positions between Turkey Hill and the primary. And then in the bottom, we see the shared positions district-wide. So as an example, we have one occupational therapist in the district that services all 4 schools. We have 2 English language learner teachers currently, and we have one school resource officer, and I think he's actually worth maybe 2 He's so effective and well-suited for the role. He's been fantastic, and we're very grateful. The positions that you see there highlighted in the yellow are those positions that we feel are the critical positions to support our students who are experiencing need under a behavioral health umbrella. So whether that's social, emotional, behavioral, and things look different at the primary level than they do at the high school level, but the need is there. To see that those critical positions that we need in every building are actually shared between buildings.
Is that the same, that's not the same with the previous slide, which was instructional, right?
So the previous slide, listed out all of the positions that we put on the table as, year one.
Yep.
Right? And the ones that were identified in yellow there were the ones that we had identified a year ago as well. When we take a look at this slide, totally separate concept here. I just wanted to make sure that the community understands that we have many shared staff already.
You mentioned that in the preceding slide, some of the positions were stipended, which...
Correct.
Roughly how many of those positions are stipended?
So under the leadership column in the center, the department heads are stipended. The dean of students that we would like to see at the high school level is a stipend. The building leadership team, there are several members that form a leadership team in each of the other buildings. So the high school, the department heads function as the leadership team for that building. The building leadership stipend would be for that similar kind of leadership in each of the other schools.
And those are funded by the DOE,
No.
if they're funded here?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's, nope. Over in the services and support column, we were hoping to create a new stipended position for, we were envisioning maybe more than one, technology trainers. So we would tap one of our existing staff members who has some instructional technology savvy to create workshops for our teachers teaching teachers, so that they have somebody as a go-to that they can learn from, have support from, as they learn to incorporate more instructional technology in their day-to-day teaching. So the governor's budget was released on January 22nd, just as we were presenting the budget to the school committee meeting that same evening. So we can see we're looking at essentially a $7.9 million in Chapter 70 funds for Lunenburg, which when you look at that compared to the Chapter 70 from FY20, it's only a 2% increase. In previous years, we've seen an increase higher than 2%. And what that equates to is roughly $155,000.
Your increase is $155,000.
Chapter 70 monies to the town have increased $155,000. That's not money that's directly provided to the schools, it's Chapter 70.
Is that driven by formula?
Yes.
EQV?
They have been working on, for the last, I think, 3 years, they had a foundation budget formula review committee that made recommendations as to how the formula needed to change. And those recommendations did find their way into the Student Opportunity Act. This first year, the commissioner told a gathering of superintendents at our mid-year meeting back in January that essentially for this first year, which the funding is going to be phased in over a 7-year period, but this first year, 85% of the money, roughly, will be going to 35 districts, which means 15% of the money is going to roughly 150 districts, which is why we aren't seeing an increase in funding. I don't know what this will look like in year 2, 3, 4, 5, on down the road.
Dr. Burnham, that's 85% of new money, not the
85% of the money
total.
earmarked with the funding requirements under the Student Opportunity Act.
Okay.
Those that were earmarked for this year one,
Yep.
85% of that money. So what I'm about to share with you is the FY21 school department budget that was proposed to the school committee, and you had asked for me to come before you with an approved budget. I'm here before you with a supported budget. Last night, the school committee voted to support this budget coming forward to you, but they also agreed that I should present other scenarios that I also presented to them. So we'll get to those in a minute. So the proposed budget is a 3.24% increase. We would be looking to add an assistant principal at the K-5 level. Currently, we have one assistant principal split between the two buildings. If we add this full-time assistant principal, we would have one assistant principal dedicated 5 days a week to each of our buildings. We're also looking for a full-time school psychologist. We are looking for a special education teacher at the Turkey Hill Elementary. And these positions, all three of these positions, will serve to support the students who are demonstrating need in terms of behavioral supports at the K-5 level. We would also be looking to restore the building leadership stipends. A year ago, in order to close that gap, we cut those stipends. We're looking to restore them. And in this 3.24% budget, all of the expense lines for each school are included as they were requested and justified in the development of the budget.
I'm rather surprised the expense line goes down year to year. Is that because you're, go ahead.
I think it speaks to the fact that the personnel, the teachers, the right kinds of professional experts that we would need to meet the student need perhaps outweighs the expenses on consumable items, subscriptions for licenses for programs that we use for instruction. We try hard to steer clear of eliminating instructional tools for teachers. But it does hurt when we cut expense lines, and I will get to that with one of the other scenarios.
Before we leave this slide, may I go just zero in on the total salaries budget? I gather there's proposed that requested is a 6.24% increase in salaries year to year.
Not exactly, because that salaries line here includes the new positions
Okay.
Right. and the new stipends.
So, and then the second question was, how much of that is, built by that is the annual increases that the existing staff has, and how much of this is for new positions?
I'll ask Mr. Cassidy to speak to that. How much of that increase is tied to those positions? What percentage do you think that is?
Percentage?
Yeah, so right there it says it's a 6.24% increase in salaries. What is it if we roll our staff forward with no new positions?
I can't tell you the percentage, I can tell you the approximate amount. So it's about 260,000.
260,000 for existing.
Of teacher salaries moving forward on the educational and the column changes and longevity increases.
Which are all contractual obligations.
And that's paraprofessionals, it's custodians, that's secretaries, everybody moving forward.
Okay. giving me enough to
I don't know
go. 260,000, right?
Approximately 260,000. If I can just say one thing, that is a little higher than normal, just because there's an extraordinary amount of teachers that are getting that educational increase this year.
Step in.
Yeah, the step increase.
Well,
We don't-
step and lane. So step is based on years' experience.
Yeah.
And the lane change is based on earning graduate credits.
And that is a special case this year to next year. That will,
Yeah,
That's not typical.
It was very low last year and very high this year. I think moving forward, we're budgeting right in the middle.
And your teacher contract expires this year, and I know you're currently in negotiations on that. You've forecasted as part of this a 2% increase?
We're operating on the assumption that annually, we'll be looking at a 2.5% increase.
2.5, okay.
Based on, the history of town manager's target budget, we're going to assume that that's the target budget for the next.
No.
Yes.
You may not be answering the question I'm asking. Assuming you had a teacher contract for next year and a negotiated COLA increase as part of that budget, you've substituted a number for that COLA increase this year into that budget.
Yep.
What is that number?
We put a line into this year, this budget, that is salary reserve. This year, currently, we are negotiating with the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the custodians, and the food service. That salary reserve line is the money that's available for COLAs for all of those units.
Does that translate to a blended percentage?
I would say that it's difficult for me to answer that question right now because we are in
Fair
the
enough.
process of
I
negotiation.
mean, I could go and do the math, it's not,
I think it's fair
Big
to
a deal.
say that based on the numbers of employees in the different units, increases for a unit that has a small number of employees is not going to have the same impact at the same COLA as the teachers' union. So,
all right,
yeah.
understood.
So to give you a little bit more specifics, throwing percentages around, so the teacher salaries are about 70% of our salary and wages budget, and 70% of our budget is basically salary and wages. So percentage increases may vary from group to group based upon the impact.
But the teachers are the overwhelming majority of that.
Yeah.
I'd just like to know, please stay up here, I think we need you. Is what I'm going to say a correct way to handle the numbers? There is approximately a little less than a $900,000 increase from the FY20 budget salary, and FY21 budget salary in this slide. 260,000 of it is for the increase, the standard step and merit increase.
Yep, all contractual. Mhm.
And it's contractual driven. So the net for new teachers, am I correct in assuming would be approximately 900,000 less than 260,000? Or about what, 640,000? Sounds,
That's a little high.
Yeah, that sounds,
It's a little high, so.
Does it include the reserve?
it would include reserve, so that's what I was going
Right,
at.
and
640,000 seems a
Right.
little high.
There's a large reserve in there as well, too.
Right.
So-
I think there's a later slide.
the reserve, the salary reserve, the money's available for the contract negotiations for all the units, 322,000.
Okay, so it's about half of the 640,000, okay.
So there is a slide coming up that'll address, and hopefully my numbers were correct, but we did try to address that. The percentage adjustments will be presented in detail on that.
Thank you.
So I think it's worth mentioning that the positions that we included in the FY '21 proposed budget, that 3.24% increase, actually do support the strategy objectives, all 4 areas. They will impact actions under all 4 areas of that strategy for continuous improvement. So what goes unfunded from that original list of our year 1 staff in the 5-year plan? We've taken out a kindergarten teacher. Right now, based on the registration numbers we have, our kindergarten registrations are at 100. We have to continue to monitor that in the coming months because students can come in and register anytime up to the start of school year and even beyond if they move into the district. If we see a significant uptick in enrollment, we are going to have to reevaluate the need for this position. With any kindergarten classroom, currently, the model is 1 kindergarten teacher, 1 full-time paraprofessional dedicated to the classroom. So that is the second position here. That for now, we're taking those and setting them aside. The grade 2 teacher, there's another slide that gets at that, so I'll wait until I reach that slide to explain further. The part-time, the additional FTEs for art and music at the primary school and for music at the Turkey Hill have been taken off the table. I've asked the administrators if they can look at their scheduling model a little bit differently. So currently, every first grader gets art once a week, music once a week. I asked the administration if they would please look at other models. Perhaps there's a schedule where classes have a certain rotation of specials for the first quarter or the first semester. And then the second semester of the year, they have a different schedule, so that they would still all have the same specials in the course of a year, but they wouldn't necessarily have them once a week all year long. So that's how we're attempting to address that need without adding FTEs. You see that there's a reading teacher listed here for both the primary and the Turkey Hill. We're hopeful that we will be able to fund these positions with Title I monies next year. We'll have to see what the allocation looks like at the end of July to know whether or not we can truly hire 2 full-time positions. And lastly, there's a paraprofessional position at the Turkey Hill. Our hope was to recreate the same model that we implemented a year ago at the primary school, where we added a teacher for what we're calling our transitions program. This program supports students with behavioral needs, and ideally we would want a teacher and a paraprofessional, because oftentimes you may have more than one student involved in a circumstance where they have some need at the same time. You may also, for some students, need to send them back into classroom for an inclusionary setting, into their art classroom, their music classroom, and oftentimes having para support in the transition into that classroom is very helpful for the success of the student in that classroom. We're taking that off the table. Also unfunded would be the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. This is the second year that we've identified it as a need. We have not had this position in the district since June of 2012, and I showed you all of the curriculum shifts that have occurred in the last 10 years without curriculum leadership, dedicated curriculum leadership in the district. The positions there that you see in yellow, we're looking for alternate funding sources. So perhaps some of the stipends might be funded out of a revolving account or grant funded. If grants become available, new grants become available that align with priorities where these types of positions would meet those priorities of a grant, we would look to write a grant and hire these positions. The unfunded services and support staff, you might recall that I brought before you last year an athletic trainer, and we took the athletic trainer off the table last year. We're taking that off the table again this year. I had mentioned a year ago that we thought that there may be a mandate coming that districts that have sports programs would be mandated to have a trainer. That still has not happened. We're taking that off the table again. The technology trainers, the stipend, the teachers teaching technology workshops and supporting teachers, we're taking that off the table. And we were looking to add a paraprofessional to the middle high school library. Through the NEASC accreditation process, the team identified that the library really would benefit from additional staffing. Taking this position off, the administrators are going to look at how they might optimally use staff currently in the building, creatively to provide some additional support throughout the day. It's not going to be one consistent person, perhaps. It might be a rotation schedule to get additional supports into the library. We're not sure what that looks like yet, but that's what we're looking to do. And you see the literacy coach is also listed here. Again, depending on our funding through Title I, we would like to hire this position. This position would be more of a leadership position, take on the responsibilities of coordinating the Title I grant, tracking all of the data, writing the grant, submitting documentation and whatnot. And for Title I, that's a significant amount, actually. Additionally, this person could serve to coach teachers in literacy instruction in classrooms and would oversee the reading teachers that are in the two buildings. This slide here shows you the trend for Chapter 70 funding over the last handful of years. And you can see that the percentage of the budget that is supported by Chapter 70 seems to have leveled out round about 37%. This is that same breakdown of personnel and non-personnel lines in the budget to get to the overall percentage increase of that 3.24. Again, that's an increase on the personnel portion of the budget of about 6.24% and a decrease of the non-personnel by 3.5%. So here's a little bit of a budget summary. Mr. Cassidy, do you want to speak to any of this?
I don't have my glasses on, so the summary, to give you the details that you were looking for earlier. So it's this slide demonstrates, we start with the FY '20 budget. The true cost of level service of staffing is $340,000, not $280,000. The new positions are approximately $236,000. That's our psychologists, our AP, our special ed teacher. We do have a salary reserve of $320,000, and then we do have expense reduction that involves a reduction in an out-of-district placement, just someone aging out that we're anticipating, a shift of some of our health insurance to some of our revolving accounts, and that's how we came up with that amount. And our increases, our total budget that we're proposing is $21,470,331. So there's the breakdown.
Very useful slide. I'm sorry, I got ahead of the game here. Can we get a copy of your presentation, Doctor?
We have it
It was
Yeah.
emailed.
in email
John.
today.
It's in here.
Yep,
That's what it was.
yep. I didn't print mine either.
Did they get the copies of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Digitally. There are some notes at the bottom of this slide. I think it's worth reviewing that a year ago in this process, in December, with our proposed budget for the current fiscal year, originally was presented as a 5.9% increase, but then when adjusted for the actual health insurance numbers, was an ask of 4.7%. And in the end, our final FY20 budget was 3%. I also think that it's important to note that we are continuing to see growth and demographic changes, and level service budgets will not allow the district to continue to perform at or above the state in terms of student achievement and growth. We need to invest in the operational budget of the schools to ensure that we can continue to meet our students' needs. And again, we were asked by the school committee to bring forward a student needs-based budget, and that's what we just presented to you. Other budget scenarios that were presented to the school committee. Scenario 2 would be a 2.9% increase. We would look to reduce that request for a full-time psychologist to a part-time psychologist. We would then have some health insurance reductions that would be in that mix as well. And we would look to have reductions of school-based expense lines.
Oh, just real quick before you get off that slide, that staffing reductions, is that reducing existing staff or just staff you're hoping to add?
The one full-time school psychologist position that we are asking for in the 3.24 budget, in a 2.9 scenario, we would be looking for 0.5.
Okay, so it's not cutting any existing staff?
Correct. So what do those budget line reductions include? There would be a reduction at the high school in art supplies. There was a proposal to take the yearbook class that is part of the school programmatic offerings. It's a course that they take during the school day. Move that back to a yearbook club after school, which would involve a stipend for the advisor to that club. And now you've freed up a teacher to teach an additional art class during the day, but they need materials for that class. So that's the related cost. We're going to continue to move forward in a 2.9 budget with yearbook remaining as a class during the day. We would make some reduction to phys ed supplies, things like kettlebells and volleyballs, nets and timers, etc. We're also looking at an alternate option to virtual high school. We're looking at options that provide us much more flexibility to meet varied student needs as compared to virtual high school. The way virtual high school operates, you commit one teacher to teach a virtual class of 25. Now you have 25 seats open to you. Students register for those classes like they would for an on-site classroom face-to-face with the teacher. The models that we're looking at would also allow us flexibility if we had a student out for an extended period on a medical. They could access an online curriculum and stay current. If we have students who fail courses, they could take this curriculum through the summertime for credit recovery. Currently, we don't have any options for credit recovery. Our students go to Fitchburg for credit recovery. So a shift from virtual high school to a different platform actually provides us much more flexibility to meet student needs. At the middle school, we're talking about a general reduction of office supplies, art supplies, library books. The ELA line, there was a request for a laminator. We're taking that off the list. And for social studies, there was a request for 4 maps. This year, we've been involved in a transition to readiness to teach the new revised curriculum standards for social studies and history. These materials would have supported that new curriculum. Turkey Hill Elementary, again, we're looking at a reduction in library books. Audio-visual would be cut. There was a request for 3 document cameras. General school supplies would be reduced. Computer contracted services, specifically a program that we have been using at multiple grade levels called IXL. Students use this. It's a program to support their math learning, and it's individualized. It kind of, based on their performance, provides a customized model for them to continue to learn from where they are and get practice so that they can advance. So it does provide that differentiated instruction, something that meets the student where they are and helps move them to where they need to be. Additionally, we would reduce the new furniture line. There was a request for desk chair units. At the primary school, again, we're looking to reduce art supplies, library books, music supplies, although important to note, there will be funding so that we can maintain the first grade music production. We'll also look to reduce the computer contractual services. We were hoping to subscribe to an app, Pick My Kid. There are staff members here in Lunenburg who know of other families in other districts where this is utilized. We have a high volume, I think it's a high volume, of day-to-day dismissal changes. We might receive 30 to 40 requests on a given day. My child will not go home on the bus today. My child will go home on the bus today. This person will pick my child up today. In order to efficiently and effectively make sure that that information is communicated to all of the parties that need to know, to ensure that the child gets to where they need to go to the right spot to be taken home, picked up, there's a lot of man hours there tracking all of that, right? This app would allow parents to type their requested change in, and it would automatically go to the office, go to the teacher. Everybody's getting that communication at the same time. It would help really the efficiency, but it also adds a layer of safety for students so that mistakes aren't made at dismissal time. Guidance supplies would be cut and absorbed into the general office supply line for the school, and the new furniture line would be cut. This is budgeted for that 7th kindergarten classroom. So we feel at this point we can reasonably take that off the table. Again, we may have to revisit that depending enrollment.
Dr. Burnham, one quick question on the Pick My Kid application. That 2650, once that is set up, is there a annual maintenance fee for that?
I believe it's an annual subscription.
Yes.
So no maintenance fees per se, it's the cost of an annual subscription.
Okay. And you don't happen to know what that amount is?
That's it.
That's
The
the line,
2650
right?
is the
one.
Yep.
That's the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Scenario 3, a 2.5 budget, which was the town manager's target for all the departments. So what would that look like? All of the cuts that we just explained. In addition, we would eliminate the requested assistant principal position. We would still have, in this budget, a part-time school psychologist. We would, again, make some further adjustment to health insurance and school-based budgets, and again, that really is going to come down to high school guidance software. Currently, most high schools use Naviance, which is a great program, but the state has been working to develop a similar program. That would be no good. Currently, we can't fully break away from Naviance because the other program doesn't fully yet offer all that Naviance does. But we would be able to make some reductions in the components of the Naviance subscription that we have.
Dr. Burnham, just, if you could go back to the previous slide.
Sure.
That 154,571, that's from the 2.9 or from the 3.4?
That additional 154 is from the 3.24.
It's from the 2.9.
Okay.
Okay. All the budget scenarios include staff seniority and degree advancement, any of the proposed positions that we left in the different scenarios, any contractual increases, health insurance adjustments, and our general ed transportation, because we entered into a contract, we signed a contract last year, so we know those costs, so those are factored in. Some of the things that we still don't know, circuit breaker, we won't know until the end of this fiscal year. State and federal grants, typically we don't receive our allocations until late July, early August. As we mentioned, we are currently in bargaining with 4 units, but the impact there, one way or another, won't exceed that salary reserve line. And enrollment, the wild card I keep referring to, right, relative to registrations, particularly at the primary school. What we're envisioning based on current numbers, currently we have 6 kindergarten classes with approximately 21 in a couple of classrooms. We would look to move those 6 kindergarten classes to 5 first grade classes, which would increase the class size to about 25. We would move the current year 6th first grade teaching position, not necessarily the teacher, but a teaching position, up to the 2nd grade to be the 6th, 2nd grade, because this year, the first grade class was our very large and unexpected kindergarten class last year. Next year, they will be 2nd grade. So there's no two ways about it. There have to be 6 2nd grade classrooms next year. They will have a class size of 25.
So if I heard those numbers correctly, you've got room for roughly 25 more registrations in kindergarten to be at the same level you are this year,
Yep,
give or take.
give or take.
Thank you.
So those are the the things that we've been playing with creatively to do the best we can to meet the needs with limited resources. There are also some future unknowns, probably not to impact FY21, but I think it's worth putting them out there publicly so that people know that we are thinking about these things. Again, we will likely continue to have a challenge predicting exactly what we're going to need because the enrollment projections are really not reliable. So it will remain a wild card. We do know that we have a shifting demographic in town, and we definitely know that we are seeing a shift in the nature of the needs of our students. TCP is also a wild card that will impact us. As an example, should a project move forward, we will likely have to relocate out of the building. And when I say we, I'm talking about the superintendent's office, the business office. We have an office for IT, we have storage for IT, we have storage for the superintendent's office, the business manager's office, the special ed office, file storage for special ed, our food service director, our ACE program, which is our special ed program for our 18 to 22-year-old population, as well as our Community Links program, which is a grant program that currently operates using 2 classrooms. And this year, our extended day program, before and after school, is using 5 classrooms. So depending on what happens with registration numbers, right now the registration numbers for next year's extended day before and after are down. We aren't capped at that one. We haven't reached the cap yet. So there's still some room for additional registrations. We'll have to see what happens with that. We may or may not need 5 classrooms for that program. But at some point, if a project moves forward with that building, we will have to relocate all of that. And lastly, Turkey Hill Elementary, the facility itself. You know, some decisions are on the horizon relative to, investing in some significant systems replacements, which realistically present a real challenge because they aren't the kind of projects that can reasonably be started and completed in a summer period. And the students likely cannot be in the building during that kind of a project. Whether it's a renovation to the whole building, whether it's a decision to have a new build, again, that's something that's on the horizon for all of us in the community to be thinking about. So where are we at? We did present our budget originally to the school committee in January. We also did staff presentations to all of our school staff in January and February. We were assured of the target budget at 2.5 in January. We held, as part of the school committee meetings, question and answer periods within the agenda for 2 different meetings this budget cycle. And last night, the school committee voted to support my bringing forward to you the 3.24% budget. We do have a plan in place. You can see various levels, 2.9, 2.5, but you have a sense of the nature of what the reductions would likely look like if we had to come in somewhere below a 3.24.
I asked very quickly, the Q&A sessions, did you get a better response than you did last year? Thank you.
They had less of a response than they got last year.
Last night, there were no, and I think the one that we had in February, I don't even know if we had one question from anybody in attendance, even at the last
I just
Q&A.
remember your frustration last year, having separate meetings that nobody showed for. I was just
Right.
wondering. Thank you.
That's correct, yeah.
Our budget hearing has been posted and is planned for the next school committee meeting, which is next week, Wednesday night. And then, of course, we have the town meeting in May. Any additional questions?
Thank you for all that. Just real quickly before we jump off, I pulled out the budget sheets, and on the proposed reductions, the 154,571, it says on the budget sheet that that's from the 3.4%. So I'm not sure we quite said it that way, but
Right.
that, Peter, that's what that represents, from 3.4%. The total reduction is 154, not from 2.
The 154 takes us from the 3.2 down to the 2.5.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. So with that, open up to the committee for questions.
I have one question and I have a lot of comments. I was waiting for Jay to ask.
Oh.
Thought he might have a question to ask. All right, I'll ask it. There was an issue that came up this year around snow removal in the school department and a shortage of personnel. You had somebody injured, another, I don't know what the whole situation was, but suffice to say, you had to make an emergency request to the DPW for assistance in snow removal. And we found ourselves in a couple of different circuitous conversations here about can that, should that, or how could that get rectified from
In the
a-
current year.
in the current year from a budget perspective?
So I've had a conversation with the town manager a month and a half or two ago, probably when you first originally raised the issue.
Okay.
And I just suggested that I would need an invoice or a memo to request a funding transfer, and then the school committee would have to vote to that line item transfer.
Okay. So this is within the realm of possibility, but still a TBD.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I want to make sure that it doesn't go unsaid. We are really very grateful for the collaboration and support that we've had from the DPW through the winter months. I'm very happy that we have a very good working relationship with the department.
Great. Thank you.
Good to know.
I want to echo the comments that my colleagues have already made about your work and the work of the school committee in preparing the budget this year. I know every year it's a laborious project, and trying, because you're dealing with a lot of information that comes and trickles in slowly when you're making assumptions. We asked for a bit of an accelerated timeline this year, and I think that was healthy, and I appreciate the work that the school committee did to weigh in and endorse a budget, one of the scenarios that you presented today. And I, all things being equal, I tend to agree with them. I think that 3.24% budget is a reasonable number, given some of the situations that we're facing as a town and our population and our growth and what we're going through with our shifting demographics, the changes to some of our compliance requirements, and also the changes that are happening in education as a whole. I had actually expected, and I had relayed this to this committee last week, my expectation from watching your previous meeting on video was that they were going to endorse the 2.9% version, and I had apprised
surprised
this
me, too.
committee. I had apprised this committee of that expectation last week, so I apologize for misleading you.
Not necessary.
But, and I had a very brief conversation with the superintendent on this yesterday. I had intended to come tonight very aware of what you had done from a scenario perspective, and intended to ask the town manager for a reciprocal view. So, for example, if we were to fund the school department at 2.9% or at 3.424%, what would be the scenarios in the rest of the town, given a finite amount of money? Because I think, frankly, I think that that's only fair. You know, they brought forth a needs-based budget, which, you know, the town manager has supported. The school department has brought forth a needs-based budget with a variety of scenarios. We're not seeing those scenarios still. Despite my personal requests on a number of occasions, we're still not seeing those scenarios balanced against the school department budget. And so I had intended to come tonight making that request again in a more formal manner. The problem is that the situation has changed dramatically in the course of the last 2 weeks. And, you know, what I relayed to the superintendent last night, I believe more every hour, which is, I'm not 100% confident in our state aid money in FY '20, let alone the governor's budget in FY '21, due to coronavirus and the effects on the economy. We've got an exodus of about 250,000 college students in the Boston area. We have no tourism in Boston. Just Chinese tourism in Boston is almost $1 billion in economic activity. We're about to see notices from the DOR, panic notices saying that revenues are way down. And I unfortunately expect that the scenarios that we're going to find ourselves asking the town manager in the very near future are scenarios of cuts across the board to all departments to account for a lack of state money coming in Chapter 70, Chapter 90, and other revenue sources as well. So I just wanted to lay that out there. I think, you know, I wanted to be aggressive this year and try the system to a certain degree. But I feel like, unfortunately, given the events of the last 2 weeks, we have to be very conservative and very careful.
I don't disagree.
And actually, I really do agree with that analysis, unfortunately. But it's the way it is. And that makes the last 3 or 4 slides that you presented very valuable to me, because you framed the trade-offs, at least within the school department, of what the consequences are. Now, going back to the beginning of the presentation, you talked in terms of 5-year horizons. And actually 6-year horizons, because some of the 5-year horizons included initiatives that you asked for last year and were not funded. So I'm assuming what you do next year is to go just roll it forward another year with the with this is what we could not fund this year, and going from that. So it's not like the need goes away.
Correct.
It's that the funding may be strained. You know. Of course, the other issue is the fact that there are, in fact, real trade-offs that affect other departments.
All right.
Very good presentation, very, very clear, very nice, very comprehensive.
Thank you.
Any other committee questions?
I would just like to thank you all for the shifts that you made through this budget cycle. And I'm sure that Mr. Cassidy agrees that the informal conversation that we had back in the fall was beneficial. The symposium was beneficial, so we appreciate it. And I also appreciate the fact that you've listened to our needs, and actually feels like you understand and support the fact that we do have needs. I think the challenge for us as a community is the limited revenue.
Yeah.
And we will always do the best we can with what we get, always. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to the school committee as well.
Oh, just real quickly, are there any questions from the public? Okay, thank you very much. Then I guess moving right along, we'll take the DPW. And Terry will join us again.
Welcome back.
Do you want to borrow it? I can get a printer. Is that okay? Yeah.
Jay, I'm so disappointed.
They were here last time. I thought it was... Jack, you have to visit it later. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just,
Yeah, no. Yeah, we're all getting to the same place together.
You don't have enough to spread out. Well, if I put that... You need a side table.
While they're setting up, I just, I wonder if we could skip to the meeting minutes or another item on the agenda.
Oh, sure.
I have minutes.
I saw the minutes, and I did have one comment on the DPW portion of the informal discussions.
From the previous ones?
The ones that you have for tonight?
Yeah, I have not distributed these.
Is this isn't 1, 9, and 12?
was it an email?
No.
19.
This is 23.
Okay, I'm sorry
The other
then.
ones we approved at the last meeting, and I
Okay.
had submitted, but I can go back and change it.
Well, I wasn't, I just, when, after Jack was introduced, you referred to DPD, and I wasn't sure what the DPD was. So, so then that's why I think I was like confused, so.
All right, no, I
No,
just
thank
copied
you.
you. because I said-
Keep it simple.
And then they'll...
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's fine then.
Oh,
So
all
all you have to do is
right.
press forward, backwards. But she said she accidentally pressed
John,
this
there's two
button, and then when
stacks
you
coming
turn the
down.
whole thing off, you just press it
John?
again, put it back on. But only push that
Two
button.
documents you've got, yours.
I'll be right here.
Okay, you're going to be right here?
Yeah.
The DPW, there we go.
I often use this.
Oh, good, the whole presentation. Oh, is there one more?
She needs a
Terry already have it. Terry, do you already have that?
I don't know, what is, this?
Yeah.
No?
Is there another one? Here, you can have mine.
I can see it.
You'll be fine without
I'll be
the
fine,
writing?
yeah,
Okay.
I can see it. I'm also not sure if this was was this part of the emailed presentation from the DPW budget?
This, I don't believe was, but this was.
Okay, then I'm good then. And then basically, looking at the minutes, I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 23rd.
Thanks for coming.
All right, I second. Can I second?
No, ask John to second.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And just as caught up as I was last week.
Sisyphean task.
I didn't know what I was getting into.
All
I got
right,
hoodwinked.
are we ready?
I think so.
Pretty tricks.
The floor is yours.
As creaky as it is, right?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good to see you all. Takes me a little bit to get rolling, but you know, after I get rolling, it's hard for me to...
I don't think anybody's
It's hard for-
worried about that.
Hard for me to shut up. I mentioned to Heather today, it's kind of like an old lawnmower, you got to pull it a few times, but once it gets running, it runs till it runs out of gas. So, they say that, you know, you're here to present your budget. I understand, it's not my budget, it's a DPW budget. But beyond that, I need to mention, and it's a sincere thank you to the people that get me here, that get all these numbers here. We do play a part at the DPW for sure, but most of the work is done by the town manager, with the assistance of Karen Brochu, the town accountant, and in my particular situation, Samantha Tucker, or Samantha Lennox. She did get married 2 years ago, but I will forever call her Samantha Tucker. I'm not sure if that's very flattering picture over here. So I'm thankful, first of all, for the opportunity. They're helping for the opportunity to do this. This is the 26th consecutive budget I've presented. Kind of proud of that. But again, it's not the work of one person. It's the work of many people. And, without those folks, it would really be a struggle for me here. So I'm asking for your support for this budget, your investment into the DPW in order to keep us on this trajectory. We have a good trajectory. We're moving upward. I'd like your support. My heart's sort of in my throat when they do this at town meeting and hold, so I don't, know what goes for there. But I appreciate your support, and really, and I'll finish up with this at the end, but thank you for all you do. I know it's a thankless job. It's a lot of time. If you do it right, and you do it right, it's an awful lot of work. So thank you very much. From the town report, and I know you read that, I wrote that everyone at one time or another is a customer of Public Works. And what I mean by that is what you see here. It's not that we do anything more extreme than anyone else, or any better, or any worse than anybody else, but I do think our umbrella of responsibilities is a bit wider than most. And that means that we are going to need constantly the cooperation of residents and of other departments. I think it's clear that DPW has gained a seat at the table of first responders. We are not first responders in the sense of police and fire, but certainly if there's a natural disaster, there have been storms, we're the first people on the scene. And if we're not the first people on the scene, we're available 24/7 to support those people that are the first responders in that situation. I can tell you, going along with that, with the support of others and the support of other departments, I'll tell you, there's a lot of talk about empowerment and strength, and I can tell you, never do I feel more empowered or stronger, personally and as a department, when I have the support of the town manager and I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with the police chief and the fire chief. I'll tell you, that's a formidable force, and I'm very thankful for their support, their friendship, and everything they do for this town, for me, and how we work together. The camaraderie really is something that makes this job worth it when things are tough. We're going to start with this slide, and I don't know how this is going to work out for me here. Usually I take it, but we'll see how it works. Before I get into the budget proper, I like to do this occasionally, and what this is, and these numbers are from the town accountant, so I'm just working off an average. I know people look at that tax bill and say, well, geez, I spend a lot more than that, but I can only work with the averages, as you know. And what people often say, and when they're frustrated, particularly when they come in to get that bucket of sand, and geez, we just can't give you. Oftentimes in that frustration for that situation and other situations, they inform me that they pay their taxes, and it's commendable that they do. We all pay our taxes. So I think what's important, and I do take the time to explain it to them, and it's amazing how many people to this is news to people, is that on the average tax bill, what goes to Public Works is $388, less than $400. That's not a quarter, that's a year. Okay, so this is not a statement of looking at other things and say, oh, our share is not, it's just to inform people that if your average tax bill, and certainly there are more, so that goes proportionally up or proportionally down, that for the services we provide, you are paying the town, your interest in that, your investment in that is $388, plus or minus. I think that's a piece of information people should know. This is new technology for me here, so I don't know that we didn't have that percentage chart in there. I guess we didn't. That's okay. With the amount of money that we do have, it's always been, impressed upon me and other department heads that you always should be searching for grant money. Never be complacent with the budget you have. Always look for grants. They're out there. Now, we don't have a grant writer, somebody whose job it is to just look for that. Town manager plays that role to some extent. So not to sound less than humble, these are things that over my tenure here, we've been able to procure. Some of them go back quite a ways. Summer Street is the big daddy of it all with $9 million. And this year, we were able to add a complete streets grant for $280,000 for the connectivity sidewalks, sort of an enhancement of the town center. That's going to begin in the spring. Lots of things are going to begin in the spring. And one that didn't make it onto the slide was a $165,000 grant, which will help us in the cost of the new fueling station at the DPW. That was a point of contention at town meeting last year, and the funding, and it just goes to that whole capital funding and estimations, and it's pretty difficult to do 12 months ahead, but certainly the $165,000 is going to be a great help. We've already begun working with the consultant, and that's another job that will be started and completed this season.
Jack, can you offer some specifics on that? What is the timeline on that fuel pump project?
We're going, in real time, we're going to conservation next week. Once we go to conservation, we'll create specifications and a real plan. We're going with a sketch, a conceptual plan that allows for tweaking. But it's pretty definitive in terms of placement, size. I expect that when that begins, beginning to end, 10 to 12 weeks. The thing that's tough here is that grant has a time limit on it, and the
That's why I'm asking.
yeah. So you should have just asked me that already. It is time sensitive. So we have to expend that $165,000 by June 30.
Well, you also have appropriated funds for this fiscal year from town meeting.
That's right.
As well.
That's
that
right.
need to be
But,
expended by
yeah,
then.
when we expend, if we don't expend all of the funds, great. But to be in step with that grant, the expenditure of $165,000 has to be completed, paid for, and then we apply for reimbursement. It makes it a little tight, because a project of this size, the procurement, usually have to go at least 4 to 6 weeks. 6 is more realistic. So it'll be tight, but it's doable. It's doable. In fact, this spring, we got a little jump on things this spring, because unlike last spring, we're talking about snow, but that's coming up behind me here pretty soon.
What about the Pleasant Street project, Jack? Is that?
That's in review from
Similar views, though, from a funding perspective? Do those funds evaporate on that
No,
project?
no, they don't. That's moving, of course, they all move a little more slowly than I'd like them to go, but we couldn't have done much in the winter months anyway. It's into 75% review. It's somewhere between, there was an indication that usually it goes 25, 75, 100. There was some indication from our consultant that they wanted to go see a 50% review as well. Far be it for us to say, let's jump to 75. So it's in that process. That money's in the bank, so to speak, and we're in that process of review from Mass DOT. Things don't get any less expensive as time goes along. Things will never be as inexpensive or will be more expensive from today on. So while we do have that, and it's still in the conceptual stage, it's difficult, as it always is, for, sealed bidding, what we're going to be. But that amount of money should give us a good leg up on that project.
But to be clear, there's no fuse on that money. When we spend it is when we spend it. It's not conditioned by the end of the fiscal year.
It's not that we're going to drag our feet. I don't know 4 or 5 years down the road if they would get tired of it. I can't answer for them, but as I understand it, unlike the complete streets, it doesn't have to be done by, actually, complete streets is a year from June. The gas tanks are this June. I know of no drop dead date on that bridge.
Okay.
Jack, on the new fueling station at the DPW, what's the lifetime of that? How long do you anticipate the tanks to be viable?
No disrespect, John. You and I won't be around when the tanks.
Well, okay, could be next
Yeah.
week, could be,
No.
3 years from now, right?
The consultant just told me the tanks are warranted, or lifespan, not the warranty. The lifespan of the steel tank is 30 years.
Well, I can guarantee you right about the first statement.
That'll be somebody else's problem, perhaps. Although the way things are going, I might not get out of here anyway, so. So we're back in the snow, okay? We're back in the snow. Here's a history of where we, 5 or 6 year history. None of those in the right column are above budget. In the black, so to speak. 1 year there in 2016, it was a pretty decent year, but you can see, more importantly, down at 2019, we're currently, we'll call it $90,000 over our allotment. It could be worse. Here's a distribution of those totals. I bring this to your attention for one reason in particular that's of interest to me, is that when you look at year expended to date, far and away the overtime for the people that work there is always comes in lower. I happen to think that they're the most important thing, most important resource in that, and year after year after year, they are the least expensive, if you would say, on the snow. Now, before you ask me about the school, and I'm glad you brought that up, and Dr. Burnham said it maybe more eloquently than I could say it, but or would say it, that we have a good working relationship. That is probably an understatement, but when it came to us, November, which is kind of late, we like to lock these people in by October, that they were in a fix. We were fortunate enough to have a relationship with one of our contractors who jumped right on it. We kept them there on the school campus throughout the whole winter, and as you heard Dr. Burnham say, did just a tremendous job. Moving forward, I'm sure it'll be the decision of the town manager with Dr. Burnham or the powers that be how we're going to handle this in the future. It was really a very complete job. That would, we'd have to think about that. In terms of the finances and who pays for what, I'm not going to be involved in that. We have the number, but when I was approached to do it, and particularly since you can run in a deficit, and winter being what winter is, it didn't matter to me as long as we got it done. The most important thing was that they were served. I think they were serviced better because we had dedicated staff over there 24/7. And so she is and I am pleased with how that went. This is just an easier graphic that shows you over time where we are, and we constantly run over. No surprise to anyone. We've had worse years than this, so to say that $90,000 in the red is okay, it's not okay. It's but it could have been worse. Now, you see down here in the bottom, what we have titled as snow runs. People come up and say, well, geez, it really wasn't a bad winter. And I'd have to agree, all in all, it wasn't a bad winter, but what you don't see, you see the big snowstorms that happened in November and some in December, but in part of December and into January, what you don't see particularly are those inch-and-a-half ice storms where we're out for 3 days straight, and I mean 3 days straight, and then suddenly, things break and we melt the ice is gone, everything's wet, and it refreezes the next night. So for staff, that goes on and on and on. And also, the fact that we're using more material, that's what makes them infinitely more expensive than a 6-inch dump of dry snow or 10 inches. So you say, well, geez, such an easy winter, how did we get to that $90,000 in debt? That's why, and it's also because the salt and other materials are stocked up in advance, so that money comes right off. The repairs and stuff are still in there. I'm gonna tell you, guarantee you right now that winter's over. Okay? Winter's over. Those April snowstorms, it's not gonna happen. Do like I do, watch the jet stream.
Jack, are we carrying more or less salt than we have in the last year or two that we've been
Same.
on salt
Same.
at this point of the year?
Yeah, it's the same. We didn't have to reorder. Or do we get a couple loads at the end, Sammy? We might have, we typically get 2,000 ton or 2,000 square yards, and that pretty much fills the structure. It got a little nerve-wracking at the end, watching the pile go down, but we didn't have to reorder significantly, no. We don't have, for all intents and purposes, since we're not going to get any more snow, it's okay, but for all intents and purposes, if we had something substantial, we would probably run out, but there's too many variables. The ground's warm now. We're never going to get those 3-day ice storms. And if we do get a foot of snow, and we've had a foot of snow, 2 feet of snow, in fact, I've given this snow spiel in March here, and typically there's still snow on the ground. This year, we're thankful there is not. So now we're going to go and try to follow in order, to the extent that I put this in order. The general highway slide. What I'd like to speak to you here about is, there are more things in general highway than what you see here, but I'm not going to go line for line for line. On the smaller items, if they're important to you, I can speak to those. The budget itself, I meant to say this in the intro, but, you heard me stammering and whatever. The increases to the budget have been moderate at best. For the most part, it's a level-funded budget. I did want to make the point that level-funded budget does not necessarily mean level service. And a simple, very elementary example of that is that if $200 brings you this far down the road and the price goes up, it's simple economics. You're not going to go as far with that same 200. That may seem a very elementary explanation, but that's exactly what it is. I can't control the funding. Peter, you made a very good point. We don't know what's going to happen given the disasters we're facing here, but I can tell you one thing. No matter what we're given, the one thing that remains constant, or the one thing that increases, is the efficiency and the effectiveness with which we spend the money. I've said it once, I've said it 26 years in a row. You give me 1,000, I'll be efficient, I'll spend 1,000. You give me 20,000, same thing. The efficiency and the effectiveness of what we do does not change. There's no compromise there. What changes is the budget, and frankly, that's somewhat out of our control.
Jack, actually,
Yeah.
as you're talking about general highway, and I'm also following along on the FY21 budget line, can you speak to drainage? The numbers related to the drainage, because I'm looking at the FY '21 target budget for drainage at 18,000, but the FY '20 actual is at about 97,000?
We had an encumbrance from last year,
So it was an encumbrance from last year, so it just carried over?
carried over, and then we spent that. So that's why, so we're actually only at like 3,000, yeah.
Okay, so it's, all right, so, okay, thank you.
You get the idea now?
That just
why
caught
this-
my eye,
This
you know.
is, this is
Yes.
what, this is why, it's a team effort.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a team effort. I really enjoy the questions along the way, but it doesn't take much to confuse me.
I'm sorry.
No, that's, don't be, by any means. Yeah, so I really want to start with the ADA down below. Stan Tech Consultants with MRPC were kind enough to do a survey throughout the community. Not the buildings now, but our analysis of what they call a right-of-way analysis, and a self-evaluation, which shows that we're defective in our ramps, our sidewalk ramps. And what they have told us, that we have a backlog using industry standards of approximately $248,000 in, I wouldn't say repairs, but, remodeling, if you will. What we've done is, they also put us on a budget. We're gonna start not with the $248,000, but with the $27,000 into next year's budget. And we won't do an awful lot with that particular 27,000, but what will happen with this report is bring to our attention that when we do our paving and when there are sidewalks involved, we will now incorporate that into the paving design, and that will be funded pavement management plan, chapter 90, so it'll supplement the 27,000. For one example, what we're planning to do this spring is to pave from Summer Street all the way down Whalum Road, and then connect that with Electric Avenue from Walmart to the Leominster line, and all those side streets on the left side in the Whalum District going down to Summer Street. So that whole area will be our target this year, but within that area, there's a long sidewalk, as you know, down Whalum Road. So as we go through with the paving, we're going to have to repave that sidewalk, rebuild that sidewalk, and so as part of the paving funding and taking some out of the PMP or the Chapter 90, we'll get a real head start on those ramps. The 27, and also in town with the complete streets. The sidewalks are going to be a big component of the complete streets plan. So we'll also be looking for some of that funding to incorporate into the appropriate ADA ramps. And then the 27 will be there where it can be of best use. One place, as I look at the report, and we can make this report available to you if you'd like, one place that I'd like to target that is somewhat overdue is that small stretch of sidewalk from the center to Rolling Acres. I really don't know if you can even call that a sidewalk. It's in such bad repair, and frankly, I'm a little ashamed of that.
Let's say a path.
So, and it's also, if you're coming the other way, it's part of our entrance. So, I mean, those decisions aren't all mine to make, but I think that's a prime candidate for a sidewalk repair. The stormwater management. I don't know what your knowledge of this. This was a permit. Best way to describe it is a unfunded mandate by the state and the DEP. It's been a struggle. This permit was floated around sort of in, 2003. I went to a meeting in Leominster, and then people lobbied against it, and well, jump forward now, 12 years or so, became a reality, and the town is now, we were always paying attention to our drainage. Now it's more structured. We always paid attention to our street sweeping and catch basin cleaning. Now it's more structured and more documented. If you bear with me 1 second, I have a statement on this. I worked with this, with our consultant, CEI. We did change consultants. I believe we changed it for the better. And let me just, I don't typically read things at a presentation, but I think I could jump around and tell you what it is, but this is, when we put this together, and it's mostly his ability to articulate exactly what we're doing, it'll give you a pretty good definition of where we are with the stormwater. It says the DPW is at the forefront of the MS4 permit compliance. The DPW is in charge of the entire roadway and the drainage system, which means we are responsible for making all that drainage infrastructure, including the catch basins, manholes, stormwater outfalls, making sure that they're maintained as needed. This is something we were doing. This helps us keep everything functioning properly, helps maintain water quality, reduces the potential for flooding. We're also responsible for inspecting and stormwater discharges, and it's nothing's mixed in there, washing machines, sewerage. Additionally, we're the ones who put down the salt during the winter months and sweep the roads clean of what accumulates throughout the year. Many of these items, and these items are done each year, and some even more frequently than that. And I can tell you, just breaking away from this, that we always sweep and clean the catch basins around the lakes in the spring and in the fall, and then spread out from there, because clearly they're the most sensitive areas. Lunenburg is also a member of the Stormwater Coalition, a task force dedicated to overseeing all aspects of the permit compliance. It goes on to say how excellent our staff is, but I'll pass up on that. So typically, as we were paving before, and this is going to be the segue into the pavement management, we would always look at what was under the ground before we paved. Sort of paving 101. Why would you pave over a defective drainage pipe? We always did that. Now, they're saying that's great, you were doing it. Now we have to do more of a documentation, a location that can be placed on a GIS at a later date. But with this came the, and here I'm going into the pavement, the debt exclusion of the pavement management. We had a pavement management plan. We've had it for about 10 years. I put it together. It was really in rough form. What it did was we went street for street, every defect, gave the road a categorization, and found out that we didn't have enough money. Well, we knew we didn't have enough money because you couldn't come to a meeting before there were building reuse meetings, they've taken center stage pretty much. You couldn't come to a meeting back in the 90s that there wasn't a conversation about how bad the roads were. The roads. So we put together this plan, and what the plan did, effectively didn't do no more roads got paved, but it showed people exactly where the road was on the list and how much money we would actually need to do it. And that's what it took. I mean, we were able to, successfully go to the ballot. People voted for a $4 million debt exclusion, which was targeting the local roads and the drainage, and this is how they tie together. Part of that $4 million, a significant part of that $4 million was dedicated just to the drainage. So not only have we squared away the drainage under the roads to be paved, and we had to do it quickly, because now we're doing almost $2 million a year, where before we were doing $500,000 a year. So it's a short season, so the drainage has got to work, so we flow that money right into the whole program, get the drainage taken care of, and pave the roads, and away we go. It's been, I'll tell you, there's and I can't take credit for this because the people that supplied us with the funding, but I'll tell you, this is far and away, aside from Summer Street, probably the most successful thing I've been a part of. it came before the Board of Selectmen and said, you know, the roads are terrible. What would you like, where would you like the roads to be? Would you like an A grade, a B? So they settled, and so, of course, it's arbitrary, settled on a C+. Well, here, we're going into the fourth year of a debt exclusion, and I feel comfortable in saying that we are, even with the roads we haven't completely addressed, that we're above a C+. People will come to me, you know, the coffee with, geez, you're doing a great job on the roads. Thank you, but it's without your funding, couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. So the pavement, and I asked somebody to kick me when I went too far on that, but I just, you know.
I think you're getting warmed up, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. It's a passion. I mean, you know how we're talking about the buildings and the buildings. So if something were to swoop in, and I know it's there, there's a lot of extra zeros. I get that, but without a plan, you see, and I talk more about this in facilities, but you know, let me wait for facilities. The roads wouldn't have got paved. The roads wouldn't have got paved without a plan. You have to have a plan. Let's stop arguing about this plan, or this, or who wants to do this, or nothing's gonna happen. Same thing happened with the roads. Nothing, the roads are lousy, they suck, they're lousy. Okay, here's the plan. This is what it's gonna cost. Do you want it? Because if you don't, let's stop complaining about it. Foresight, that Board of Selectmen and the town manager at the time not only assisted with the plan, but they had the foresight to allow the plan to be sustainable. You'll see that in an increase in the pavement management from 400,000 to 450,000. At the time we expend the 4 million, that 450,000 will be around 500, depending on how many years we go or how long we can take that from the excise. And then with the Chapter 90, we'll have roughly $1 million. That's, and I think this slide, if I can get to it, this is a slide I always bring up when we talk about pavement management. We were always down at the low side here, on the lows, where it's, I can't see, 15, 20. We hadn't addressed some of these roads for 15, 20 or more years. Which means that as we looked at these roads, we needed a huge infusion of money to get up, okay, to get it up to where we could maintain it. We got that infusion of money. Now we're getting them all up into where they're excellent or good on the scale, and see, for each dollar of repair, when you keep up with them, if you just say, the hell with it, I'm going to just let them go again, and I think that 4 or 5, it's kind of an old number, it's probably like 6 to 10 now. Once they're up there, okay, once they're up at that C+ or B, or wherever they are, then you can keep maintaining them with the million. Because you don't have to go back, and grind up the road, reshape the road. You can overlay, top and overlay, and the million should just keep us all squared away. So the whole plan was a success, and even beyond the plan, and some of those people aren't around, left us with enough money to sustain the roads. The roads should not, barring anything catastrophic, should not be an issue going forward. So we can put all our attention on the buildings. Town highway garage, some of these on the list are lesser. It's not that anything is unimportant on that list of expenditure. Yes, John?
Jack, before we go to this, I'd just like to revisit a conversation you and I had about 3 weeks ago regarding the water culvert underneath Flat Hill Road, Lower Flat Hill Road.
Sure.
And if you could just give the group a synopsis of what your concerns are there.
Okay. Well,
Really made an impression on me.
okay, well, I'm glad. I was going to get to that sort of with the capital plan, but I'm happy to do it now.
Well, let's not take it out of.
No, that's all right. I'm all over the place here. I opened this to page 2, and I don't know, I'm all over the place. Flat Hill Culvert, off of Reservoir Road, Flat Hill, you take that hairpin turn. Culvert's about a 7 or 8 foot high culvert. Mass DOT has taken it upon themselves in the last few years to inspect a culvert of any size, even if it's privately owned. Typically, for years, they would just do the ones that were Mass DOT funded, or at that point, Mass Highway funded. So they've brought a lot of, negative information to us. Some things that frankly, I got to tell you, I wasn't aware of. I was aware of this one. So I went to the capital plan, went to the town manager to ask to bring it to the capital plan, because this particular culvert, should it collapse, Lake Shirley and that tributary there will just be one, and the detour, we can detour traffic, but it'll be unbearable. So this is something we have to move forward with in sort of a preemptive strike. The design did make it to the capital plan. The construction is going to be considerable. The design alone is over $100,000, but we can't turn a blind eye to this. And it's not just this culvert. There are a number of culverts. The bridge on Lancaster Ave. There are a number of culverts. That's going to be, for me, and this was going to come to the end of the presentation, but let's jam it right in there. That's the next big plan for me. An inspection of our infrastructure in terms of culverts and bridges, small bridges and culverts. Get a value, I've already started this, get a value of like the top 10 or 12 industry standard, what it's going to cost us, and then I'll be coming to you with a list, just like the pavement, of what we have, what it's going to cost, the negative impact, which I think will be much more severe with a particular culvert than a road. I mean, you can put a cone in a pothole, you can fill the pothole, but you can't just, throw in a culvert. This all gets tied in, see, with this debt exclusion, with the drainage, and the Flat Hill culvert. It's all really a big umbrella of pavement, because the pavement's the transportation. It's what we shoot for seamless transportation throughout the community. And it's not just the asphalt, it's all these components. Did I?
Excuse me, go ahead.
What I was left with, thank you, Peter. What I was left with when I left the conversation was the prospect that there could be a catastrophic failure.
Right.
That's just what really has sort of preoccupied me for a while. I don't know how alarmist that is, if that's unnecessarily alarmist, but I had the impression that given the right stressors, that could actually collapse.
No question. I mean, it's not my opinion, although it is my opinion, but it's not solely my opinion. We have at least a few years of DOT inspections that support that.
Yeah.
These are, however they rate it. The note on the bottom, which isn't really there, says, get your act in gear, Jack, do something with this culvert and other things. So yeah, they definitely. Will it be tomorrow, John? I don't know.
No.
But it's at a point where too much traffic, heavy load, boom, gone.
Well, it's also, there's a public safety issue there as well.
No question. Besides the major inconvenience of the detour.
Yep.
We certainly would not want to be the trailer driver going over it when it ended its lifespan.
Is that project or projects like it good fodder for grants and earmarks?
Yeah, we're looking at everything we can. In fact, we're just hooking up with a consultant too, in fact. We're getting proposals from each as to who we're going to work with. And not only will we prioritize, which we always have a leg up on, but it puts a person who does this every day in the front lines of what's available for grants.
Good.
Which sometimes, for us, we've got our
Part of
head.
the engineering contract.
Excuse me?
That will be part of the engineering contract that's included in the capital.
Well, that's a given. If you're working for us and this is the work we want you to do, I mean, we're always looking, as I said before, we're always looking for supplemental funding. I mean, Summer Street, how would we have ever come up with our part of that $7 million to do Summer Street? It just wouldn't ever get done. Culvert is not that forgiving. We have to get it done. You don't want to come to this committee or to the town manager, the board, and say, folks, I need $400,000. Find it. Dave?
Jack, before we leave the Flat Hill Road culvert, is there something we can do proactively, and it's not my wheelhouse, so I'm asking you the question, with the bridge that's deteriorating and has truck traffic over it? Traditionally, a bridge is posted for 5-ton or whatever, and it eliminates trucks crossing over it. Is something like that appropriate for that culvert for the short term to preserve it from a catastrophic collapse?
Short answer, yes. Not so short answer. I think that even something with less of a weight that we might be thinking about here, it's that far gone. But yes, definitely. In fact, I work with Chief Marino on a regular basis for either a truck exclusion here or getting around that culvert there. And I can tell you, it's painfully slow if you have progress at all. The posting isn't as simple as just putting up a sign, obviously. You have to go through the state,
In
so.
approval process and
Correct,
everything else.
correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up, one more thing is that that's a particularly extreme example, but I gather that you've been monitoring other culverts. Do we have other culverts in town that are on, say, a watch list?
Absolutely. I didn't expect to get into this in such detail, but I can bring it back to the committee at another time.
Sure.
Just off the top of my head, a bridge on Lancaster Ave past the flats there, you never really even think about it. See, this is the difference between going to folks to fund a paving program and going to the town to fund, let's call it a bridge culvert program. The paving program, you go over it every day, you can feel, that damn, this, you see it, you feel it, you can almost smell it, you see the guys filling potholes and all that. But a bridge, you get over it, But there are, right off the top of my Lancaster Ave, there's one very small one at the corner of Page and Arbor. It's big, but it's low.
Sure, I know that.
Yeah, you can see that kind of going. Just a month ago, went down to the office on a Saturday, and there was a sinkhole right at the entrance. There's a huge culvert there. Put a barrel on it, went back Sunday, was a bigger hole. So if you visit down there, you'll see steel plates. That's imminent. That's imminent. There's just so much going. It's safe now with the steel plates, but to answer your question, yeah, is that the only one? Absolutely not. But I think it's most extreme because of the proximity to Lake Shirley.
Yep.
To do that, you have to do any culvert, you have to control the water. Water control is huge, and it's a huge part of the contract. In this case, you'd be dewatering the lake, in a sense. You'd have to drive pilings or do something else and create an area where then you would pump out. I mean, you obviously can't, one side's the lake, you can't, you have to be dry conditions to install the culvert. Can't you just put it in the water? Okay?
I'll swing by sometime.
I don't know how I got from culverts to town, but the town highway garage, that line, you'll see a lot of empty lines there that are either zeroed out or vacated. All those lines were transferred to facilities. The only thing that's in the town highway garage that is office supplies, postage. Highway labor, another line. Pretty simple to explain. All the salaries, the longevity, the clothing allowance. These folks are a union group, on-call stipends as well. So every 3 years, there's a negotiation between the town, our attorney, town manager, get involved myself, the union representation, and set the pay scale for the next 3 years. It's a given. The negotiations happen then. There's really no negotiations now. So what you see is what it's going to be. It shows a slight raise in the allocation, but that's because of the step increase for everyone.
Jack, when does that renew?
Excuse me?
When does that contract renew with the,
A year from June. So we have the rest of this fiscal year and another. So our admin here is in a union. The guys are in a union, a different union. And myself and Barbara Fave, the business manager, are in the salary administration plan. So for so few people, we got a lot of balls in the air down there. Traffic signs and devices. This is, this has really triggered some interest in our own Board of Selectmen. So I'm putting together some informational presentation to them on, these are the signs, the posts, the striping, the street striping that you see, how we do it, when we do it, why we do it. There are a lot of variables with all the paving that we're doing, the accelerated paving program we're doing now. It's pretty difficult to pave the road, get involved, not paving the road, and come right behind and stripe the road. First of all, there's only really 2 people in the state that do it. They're very difficult to get. It's not something we can do ourselves, so the outsourcing, although we have to do it, it's really difficult to get these people on an appropriate timing when you're doing road after road after road. And some roads, Pleasant Street, is just this year, it's just to keep the road together until we can put the top coat on. It's got a leveler course on it. Well, you wouldn't want to stripe that road with the leveler course, because then you're going to pave it next year and you have to stripe it again. However, that in certain places in town, that's not a popular activity, if you will, or protocol, because it was brought to my attention, and rightfully so. We paved a portion of Lancaster Avenue that was really bad with it's not a skim coat, it's a solid leveler course from Rolling Acres, I believe, down to Page, and every intention of going back there next year, which is this year, and putting the top coat on it. So you sort of get, double your money. It's not money that's wasted. It gets a new pavement. Now, if you left it there, you wouldn't get the lifespan that you would on that and the top coat, but it does take the paint away. It makes the road more passable, and you can go back and do it, finish it next year. So you're sort of splitting the costs. The unfortunate thing is that did have striping on it, and it was my decision and my decision alone to wait until we had the top on it to stripe it, but that became unacceptable, and as I said, rightfully so. People saw it as a public safety issue, so we striped it. One thing to remember about the striping is that the MUTCD there, very specific on how you can stripe. Not where, but how. I mean, you can not stripe anywhere if you choose, and intersections are delineated specifically, and there's laws with that, but say a reservoir road. We paved that a few years ago, and I didn't stripe it, and that raised the ire of some, and the reason for that was we were going through the complete streets, and I thought it was a wide enough road. It's one of the widest roads in the community. It would be a good place for a bike path. Yeah. Well, that sort of fizzled out, and so last year we paved a double yellow down and fog lines on either side. I think it really came out well, although I did have one comment that the gentleman felt his property was lessened because of the paint in the road, but for the most part, people, did enjoy it. I don't know if enjoy is the word, but I know myself, I can't see for beans at night, and especially in the rain, so it does help me as I hug that white line coming up Reservoir Road. The thing is, you can't put a double yellow, and single yellows are no longer legal, so you can't put a double yellow and a fog line everywhere because you have to maintain an 11-foot lane. You might sneak a little bit, but, should somebody have difficulty in a crash or something, you got a 9-foot width because you wanted to put a double yellow and people wanted you to put a fog line, it isn't always, you don't always have the right, the legal component to do that. So the striping is done as needed. There are some things that are done every year, the stop bars, the crosswalks, the parking spaces in town, they're sort of freshened up every year. But the long lines, they call them, we do as needed. One thing, keep in mind about this, and I don't know, we'll be discussing it next year, or somebody will, that as Summer Street deteriorates, the lines there, and it won't be for a few years, that'll be a significant increase in the line budget, because there's an awful lot of lines down there, similarly with Route 13, which is a mess again, because see, they use this plastic, this epoxy, and I'm going to talk all about that next week, or week after with the selectmen. Vehicle maintenance, best good feel story of the whole presentation. Best story, it rivals pavement management. We've always had trouble, I don't think, of filling staff. We've got three open positions now, that's another whole story, and people are available, and the economy and all that. But one position we have not been able to do without is a mechanic. And we had one person leave, move to Florida, and it was so difficult, it was impossible to find somebody who could, number one, work for what we were offering, frankly, and work on everything from high-tech cruisers to weed whackers to sanders to fire trucks, and nearly impossible. So I floated the idea that, we'll outsource, we'll just have to outsource it. We'll distribute the money, you might have seen that last year, police and fire and us, and we'll just have to do it. Well, that was unacceptable to the chiefs. So back to the search we went, actually packed my lunch, I get in my truck and went to no less than a dozen repair shops, trying to woo people away or see what they did or hit the road and see what's out there. And lo and behold, the dad of the son of the father that I met down in Ayer, young man came up, I'll tell you, he's been a blessing. Everybody likes him. The police and fire are more than happy with his work. He's good on the computer, the documentation. He's great with it. He's just a great person and a great mechanic, and we're very happy to have him. That's vehicle maintenance in a nutshell, let me tell you. If you don't have that guy, you're in trouble. And we were in trouble for a while. This is where we're going to talk about the fuel tank, because it's not really vehicle maintenance, but certainly related. We've talked about that. Is there anything you don't understand about that? Taking out the old ones, putting in one above ground, 4,000 gallons of each, modernized pumping system, documentation, everything. Really looking forward to that. We're way beyond borrowed time with those buried steel tanks.
Hey, Jack, just to ask one question, that'll only take 2 seconds to answer. Are you still thinking that you'll be able to keep the old pumps operational while you set up the new system, or is that not going to work out?
No, we're not, because the first thing that's going to happen is the tanks are going to come out. Okay. And on a parallel track, the pumps are going to come out. Mm-hmm. We're looking at things now. We're trying to figure out the money with the grant. I've talked to Chief Sullivan and Chief Marino, keeping them right in the loop, what we're going to do. It's going to be a struggle. Do we get a temporary tank? Do we get, usually typically, do you put a gas tank like that? There's some danger ramifications there. We're working that out. So we may just have to bite the bullet and take the gas rigs to a regular gas station. There's plenty of those around. And it's going to be really cumbersome for Sully, for the bigger trucks to go to these places that have diesel. And it's going to be equally cumbersome for me to bounce the front end loader down the road so we can fill it. But it's temporary. And once these tanks are in, they'll be in for 30 years.
Thank you.
Okay? Yep. Jump to cemetery. Now, the cemetery budget historically has only included the salary and expenses for the cemetery superintendent. You know, his salary, his stipends, his, uniform allowance, overtime, things like that. And so this is sort of a history-making night with that for the first time, and I think anybody's memory, because it's never happened. The town is going to fund $7,500. When it says purchase a service, that means to outsource part of the maintenance where it's needed, and a $2,500 allotment where we'll begin paying the fuel. It was only right that by charter, if the town manager, if the DPW director through the town manager is in charge of the maintenance of the cemeteries, then we should begin to have a budget that reflects the growing maintenance of the cemeteries. Now, nobody gets everything they ask for. Been working pretty closely with the cemetery commission, and just a meeting this week, they're pretty pleased that we're on the right track.
When you say maintenance, you mean like the roads going in and out of the cemeteries?
Everything that isn't policy, cemetery commission's a policy-making board, everything, the grass, the roads, the trees, the shrubs. One of the huge shrubs on both really, but on Holman Street have been a point of contention. We're going to try to get those under control. Anything that is maintenance will be, has been and will be come under the authority of the DPW umbrella, put into place with the superintendent and, prisoner help and where we can help. But now we'll have the beginning of a budget that we can work on. Typically, they get their money through sale of graves and perpetual care, and they have to go to town meeting and take so much out. As I understand it from the chairman, now this is the first year they're not going to do that in ever.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to pose this question or my understanding of that line. I guess basically what I'm asking is that line will cover outside contractors as well as in-house labor used, but it'll be funded from that line rather than somewhere else in the DPW budget. Is that a good assessment of that?
All right, 50/50. It'll be in place to fund any outsourcing, say a tree expert. We don't back charge the cemetery for anything that DPW staff does there.
Within your staff, okay.
We do it within the staff.
So are these services that were not being rendered previously, or they are being done by your staff or by
There were
volunteers?
services being rendered, but the funding source was in the interest gained and interest only, on the accounts in the bank that when people pay for perpetual care, sale of graves, they're in accounts. We can't spend the account, but we can spend the interest. They can spend the interest, so they would draw off the interest, which sort of limited them to what they could do.
I want to say just to, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I believe that this was one of the revolving accounts that would typically be voted on within the first bucket of things, so that the cemetery commission would have an allotment from that was voted on outside of the budget itself, but one of those revolving
Like
accounts.
an enterprise kind of thing?
Kind of like there was like a list of 10 things, like school, Karen knows.
I don't think it's a revolving fund.
I'm sure I'm using the
They're
wrong
trust
language.
funds.
The trust
So
funds,
the
okay.
cemetery commission has
Thank
a
you,
perpetual care trust fund, and they have a sale of lots trust fund. The perpetual care trust fund, they can spend interest only. They've gotten to the point where they have no interest to spend. It's basically down to nothing. The sale of lots, they have done an annual transfer out of that account for probably the last, 10 years, say. That balance is going down slowly. They probably have, I think it's about $50,000 in that account, but they're looking to do, and have done over the past few years, some pretty significant improvements at the cemetery. So they want to be able to use that money to do those types of projects, and for like the normal day-to-day operations of the cemetery, use the cemetery budget to fund those.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I believe this is, I need all the help I can get. Is that clear?
That is, thank
It
you.
should be, yep, yeah, it should, she's great. Tree removal, again, pretty straightforward, this line's been locked in at that amount for a few years, we did jump it up, this is a discretionary spending, you know, you're the person who watches that tree go back and forth, and it cracks, and so, there are more trees that people would like us to take down that we have money for, so it's more than less reactionary. We prioritize the trees we should take down. Of course, we only take those down that are on town property. And regardless of how you feel about Unitil, the tree program that they have in place has helped us immensely in doing this. Taking the problem trees down, and that's almost entirely outsourced to 3 different vendors. We rotate to 3 different vendors, so in case we have an emergency, one's always available. The parks, we added. I don't know. I'd be careful here. Is it part-time? Is it? I'm not sure exactly what to tell you. She works 19 hours a week. She's under the benefit package limit, and I'll tell you, second to the mechanic, she's wonderful. She had been a recreation director elsewhere, including Fitchburg and I think in Shrewsbury. She knows the business. She's just a very professional, wonderful young lady. She's on a part-time schedule. She works at home, and the burden that she has lifted from me and from the Park Commission is really extraordinary. And and she's also very, very good at what she does. You're familiar with the park facilities here. You know, we maintain, again, similar to the cemetery commission, we fund the superintendent, but all the maintenance is the responsibility of the DPW director through the town manager by charter.
So, how many employees do we have under the Parks Department banner?
No one.
Nobody.
Yeah.
You just described a superintendent and a part-time person.
No, the part-time person is the superintendent.
Superintendent, so
Yep.
a 19 hours.
She's a superintendent. Her hours are not what you might expect to be at 40 plus, but she nevertheless is the superintendent.
I recall last year when we were discussing that position, this was part of a number of new positions that came up across the town, and school department and the town manager's office. It was described as something in particular around, the ability to facilitate scheduling in a number of organizations, to include the school department, associations like basketball and soccer and baseball and that kind of thing. Have those organizations or the citizens at large experienced a change in service or what are the measurable returns that we've seen from that position?
Well, since we're just getting into the outdoor season, may be difficult to measure. If Dr. Burnham was here, she would tell you how wonderful Kayla's been. They're working together to make use of the basketball courts and the tennis courts as a trade-off for using Marshall Park. And experience, she's creating this whole recreation program for young kids and adults. She is just beginning to work with the Little League folks, because it's March, and the Phillies and anybody else who's going to use the field. In fact, I got an email from her just before I came here about, she feels the fields are too wet. The high school always wants to get right on because their schedule is aggressive, and I had mentioned to her last week, if you don't feel they're ready, they're not ready, and they're not ready. So she has the authority to, decide who's going to play where, when, and she will oversee the subcontractor who maintains all the fields in town. She'll, schedule and chase the fees around, the checks from Little Leagues, things like that. So I think what she's going to do has yet to be fully realized. In the future, we'll be coming to this group and another group with a definitive capital plan, something that we have not really had from the park group in quite a while, and she's putting that together already. I thought it was premature to come in this, she had just started, but that's one thing where she'll be invaluable.
I'm equally interested in services as I am capital.
Okay, is there a question in there?
Nope, it was a comment.
Okay, so let me leave here with at least a directive there. What do you?
No, I don't want to give you a directive. This was described as an outcome-based hire, right? The citizens of town are going to see a positive outcome
Right.
from this position.
You
I
will.
recognize
You will.
what you've just described as the seasonality of the job and,
Right.
and that sort of thing. But, and I recognize the fact that this is a position that is really going to make government function better in
Right.
terms of how you interact with organizations and other functions of government.
Well said.
But in
Yep.
terms of the citizens at large, the question is what's in it for us? I guess is the question, if there was one.
Management of the facilities, fair distribution of the time, work on a plan that's sustainable to maintenance of the facilities. And I can tell you, Peter, that give it a few months, and I'll be able to better answer that question.
Fair
Be
enough.
happy to.
Jack, if I make a comment, I attend most of the parks meetings.
Right.
And Kayla gives a report as to what she's working on to the commission every time she's there.
Right.
And you will be very surprised with what she's got in the pipeline and what she's done in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Programming is coming. She's hit the ground running. She, as Jack said before, she knows what she's doing, and she knows how to manipulate and negotiate to get things done. So I think you will see great things as
Yeah.
we get into the season.
Good.
And give her a year, and we'll have a lot to talk about that was accomplished.
Yep, you're right. Well said again. Yeah, I think time, the old cliche, time will tell.
Right.
I'm very impressed with her. Very impressed with her. Public buildings. These are specifically the utilities for the non-school buildings. That's the, I know I'm getting a little wordy here and we're getting close to it, but is there any, these are the utilities, the gas, the fuel, by gas I mean the natural gas, the fuel oil, and everything else that's listed in front of you there. This is a little bit of I say it brings a little bit of difficulty with whoever does this and tries to figure it out because the price of utilities is such a moving target, and I'll give town manager credit for this one. Okay, this is really the last big one, and I kind of went over this on my spiel and my soapbox about let's get together on a plan here, what we're going to do with the buildings, because you see, being in charge of the buildings, the maintenance of the buildings, we have no clear avenue of approach. If you would rhetorically, if you would let me know where we're going to go and what we're going to do, then it would be a little easier to target that building. Right now, we're all over the place. That doesn't mean that we don't do this, or, obviously we don't do anything in the old primary to speak of, but we're spread really thin. And until we have a plan of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how we're going to fund it, we are, we're keeping things together. We have one person in that superintendent that interfaces with the town employees on a daily basis. We used to have two folks, one retired, and it was the decision, well, it wasn't my decision, my suggestion, the decision of the town manager, to take some of that money from his salary and put it into the hiring intermittently of an engineer who will, with our guidance, look at projects we'd like to do. He evaluates the project, puts a better value on it than we could ever do. It's his area of expertise. And then if we're going to go with that project, he does the specifications and the bidding process, which can be very cumbersome. We've done that on a couple of projects with him already. Also, there's when we dropped the assistant mechanic, I said we had $27,000 for ADA improvements. We took 20 from that amount, not from the 27, but an additional 20,000, and that's going to go towards additional projects in the facilities. Naturally, we need a lot more money than that, but there's a list of projects that have been targeted. One thing that we are going to look at very closely, as I complain about the buildings and what we're not doing, is that we're going to target those tasks necessary for the buildings that have come to be known as envelope projects. I call them stop the bleeding projects. They're not put in place as any sort of a panacea. They're put in place to say, for instance, fix a hole in the roof so that we know there's damage in that room. We want to repair the roof so there's not any further damage. Nobody thinks that the damage is going to heal itself. But that's where that money will go. I mean, there's a whole, what we're doing there, and the importance of that, even at our level, before you get into the building reuse, is incredible, because there are people at work. Obviously, the people that work in this building, they do very important tasks in this building. Everybody's important. There's the whole accounting mechanism in this building. Land uses across the street. Town managers in this building. The needs are extraordinary. And so what we do is what we can do with what we have on a daily basis to make them as comfortable as possible, so that they can be as efficient as possible. Because, see, it's a domino effect. If people are uncomfortable because of something in the building, they're not going to function as well as they should. And if we have an accounting department or a planning, land use people that are, in a situation, an environment that's negative, well, that's a trickle-down effect of these buildings, I think, that people don't talk about enough. So that's what we try to do. And we're looking at ADA improvements. We're also going to take over not entirely, the maintenance of the library. The Friends of the Library over years have done an excellent job, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank them for the time and the money. But now that's coming to an end, in a sense that we are now going to absorb some of that into the budget, if not all of that into the budget. I'm sure the Friends, knowing some of those people, they'll still want to do other things, but in this particular case, we're sort of trying to get away from the volunteerism. And so we're going to absorb a lot of those projects, and that's part of that's the $20,000, but there's more than we can do, so it'll all come out of the facilities line.
Jack, from the facilities portion of the town, do you see projects that Green Communities could be helping out with that you have tentatively identified but have not submitted at this point?
Our facility superintendent attends those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
There was just recently an email exchange between the town manager and he on the next meeting, and what might be viable. We're going to explore every possibility. We need, as you know, we need a substantial amount of money to get over the hump with these buildings. So anything, just like the pavement, just like the culverts, anything that's out there that's available to us, we're going to go after.
Great, thank you.
Yep. This is put in our budget. Maybe Karen can answer these questions. The solid waste, it's in there, I believe, as solid waste. This is obviously the Casella, is our vendor for that. What I can tell you about this is the dynamic of our recycling has changed. I mean, they're under contract for so many years. The dynamic of our recycling has changed insofar as the market for the recycling is dried up to some extent. So when we were all doing a great job recycling and they were taking that product and then selling that product, they're in business to make money as well. Now they can't do that on their end, so now they have to charge us to pick up the recycling as well. To that extent, we did, town manager did apply for and receive a grant. I call them the recycling police. But we had a group of people that went to areas in town that were determined by Casella to be the areas where more things were put into recycling that really should have been put in the trash. These folks actually went through the trash, put stickers on the containers, pointed out what they should be putting where. This went on for weeks. We put out mailers. We were hoping that would help. I guess, as far as I know, we haven't done a return calculation on whether that was an assistance or not, but this whole thing about the recycling is really disappointing.
Do you expect to get some sort of result from, measurable result?
From Casella?
No, from the recycle police activity.
We did. It wasn't so much, well, I don't know if they're measurable. They took calculations before we set the police out there, and I don't know that those calculations were done after, were they?
Yes.
They were?
Yes.
Were they in our favor?
Yes.
All right. It's good. Oh, glad to hear that. Jack, do you administer the program?
Which program?
The trash bags and recycling?
No, we used to.
Okay.
The DPW used to order, store, and distribute the trash bags. For many years, we did that.
I know that
Cumbersome.
that's largely
Cumbersome.
contracted.
We've totally outsourced that now, in terms of the people who manufacture the bags, deal direct with the customer being the provider. I'm sure the biggest one is Hannaford. So we're out of that completely. It's really more efficient. What we are, though, in the selectmen's office, to an extent, too, are the local number for concerns.
Right.
For people when, our trash wasn't picked up, and, that seems to be a regular occurrence for one reason or another. It'll go smoothly, and then, something will happen with the trucks.
But you don't administer that contract?
No.
That's the finance director and town manager?
Yes.
Town
Yes?
manager.
Yes.
Town manager.
Yeah.
Does the purchase of the trash bags pay for itself? Is it with the non-recycled stuff that we put in the trash bags for does it pay for itself over the course of a year? We subsidize it?
Can you give an answer to that, please? I know the town initially the town picked up a significant amount of that, but Karen will have that for you.
No, the way that it works is we have the trash recycling for the curbside
Yep.
pickup of the solid waste. And then we have the recycling program, which is funded in the general fund because all residents can participate in that. So what we do as far as the Casella contract goes is whatever the monthly fee is for the pickup of the trash, the curbside pickup, I should say, whether it's recycling or trash, 1/2 of that expense is charged to the enterprise fund for the trash, and 1/2 is charged to the general fund in the recycling program. So, and then all the other costs that are related to the actual trash, like the disposal and everything, I charge to the enterprise fund, and the charges for the recycling are charged to this account that Jack is talking about now. So, and yes, the enterprise fund supports itself as far as the trash portion of the program goes.
So the $10 or $20 trash bag, whatever it is, I fill up, is pays for Casella to cart it away.
Correct.
Okay.
Jack, if I could, through you to Karen. Karen, could you stay up there for just a second? I was just looking at the numbers, with the historical numbers from fiscal 19 and 20, with the change in the recycling dollar amount, a substantial one, $35,000, I believe it is, in a downward trend. Was that an accounting thing that brought that number down to 206,000, or did something else happen with the 141,000, 144, 141, and then down to 206?
No, it's up.
The printout?
I'm sorry, my brain's
I
going the
thought there
wrong
was
way
something
today.
with the contract.
I don't
Okay,
know what he's looking at, so.
yeah, no, it
Recycling's
is
more
up.
expensive, that's the answer.
So, and that's a new contract jump
Right.
from one,
We renewed the contract, and with the change in the charges for recycling, on the old contract, we were actually receiving a credit for the recycling. Under the new contract, we pay $50 a ton? I think it's 50, but anyway, that's the reason for the increase, is
I
the,
apologize getting that backwards, but the discrepancy was what caught my eye.
so it was a significant increase from
Right.
FY19 to
Right, thank you.
It's an awful lot of information, and I thank you for your patience. I know it, I apologize for getting carried away. Try to keep it to an hour, but it's just so much stuff. I said at the beginning, it's just, we have so much going on there. We're responsible for so much, and we're so passionate about it that I don't like to for everything to have its time. So you're going to have to bear with one or two more things, and that's the Shirley Dam and the Cap landfill. Both of those are in compliance. We have, the landfill is inspected on a regular basis. That inspection is outsourced for groundwater and the cover of it to make sure that that's viable. Those reports are sent to DEP, and we're right there where we should be. The Lake Shirley Dam, 1 year we do an emergency action plan, and the next time we look at that dam, not literally, the next time we outsource work on that dam is a maintenance program. We have that hard copy and on disc if you'd like to see it. Right now, the dam is considered to be in good shape. If you're familiar with the dam, the wave wall, which is that old concrete wall between the lake and the earth berm, is beginning to show signs of wear, to a point where, all things being equal, be standing here next year talking to you about replacing or reinforcing that wall. It's not in this year's budget. The last couple slides I have are something that I always add, near and dear to me. We didn't do the capital plan. Is this athletic complex that, you'll always remember me as the guy who was trying to promote that down at the landfill. It's a huge area that I think as the school looks for more fields and the park looks for more fields, this is a prime candidate. And the carry-in, carry-out program, which is difficult gaining traction, but I feel strongly that if you're somewhere, anywhere, but if you're somewhere in a natural environment and you bring in Gatorade or whatever you bring in, that you should have the responsibility to bring it out with you. And I think that should be enforced, and hopefully someday that'll take hold in our parks throughout the town. Does anybody have a question on the capital plan?
Nope.
I'm gonna pass on this in deference to how long you've had to listen to me. But if you have a question, I'd be happy to answer it.
I do have just a couple of questions on the Shirley Dam.
Sure.
How old is that?
How old is it? I don't know what the age is of the original dam, but just before a couple of years before I got here, so probably 28 to 30 years ago, that dam was, as I understand it, under the ownership of the Lake Shirley Association. It was in dire need of repair. So one of the selectmen, who happened to be a resident of Lake Shirley at the time, was able to, work it so that the town got ownership of the dam, and therefore were able to apply for a grant. The Lake Shirley Association couldn't apply for the grant, but the town could. So, I'm guessing, John, I'm sure somebody knows that, but I'm guessing it's around 28, 30 years, the new dam.
What I was really getting at is, at 30 years or so, it's starting to show a little bit of wear and tear. Still looks as, the way you showed me a picture of it, looks like a pretty solid
It is.
facility. But, how frequently is it inspected? And do you get any sense from the inspections about what to watch for?
We know what to watch for from the inspection and maintenance report.
Yeah.
We rely a lot on the gatekeepers that go down there and exercise the valves. We're in contact with them. Just to be clear, the new structure is around 30 years old. The wave wall in front of the new structure
Yep.
is the original.
Really?
So that's what's showing the wear. There really is minor wear on, I'll call it the new structure. There's some downhill erosion that needs to be, small things that we can do. Riprap, rocks, vegetation that should be cut out of the earth berm so that moles and whatever don't go in there. The Lake Shirley Association keeps it mowed, and we seed it, keeps it mowed, so it's really in very good shape, and the superstructure itself is in great shape and reinforced by the inspection, remarks in the inspection. But the wave wall is going to need,
Yet
work.
another thing should outlast us, huh?
yeah, you're not going to let me forget that. You're right, lots of things. Again, can't thank you enough for what you do, and you can see just how this went on tonight. It's, I'm the guy that gets carried away, but it's the work of Heather, it's the work of Karen, it's the work of Sam, it's you guys. So if there aren't any more questions, it's time to go home.
All set.
Thanks a lot.
All right, yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
So, all right, we did minutes. Town manager, do you have any report? Oh, handouts. Here you go, John.
All right. My legs still work.
How many hours have you been in this building this week?
This week?
Can't imagine.
So what I wanted to provide you was two things. So last week, we discussed that we'd come to you this week with an update on the allowance for abatements. And what I provided shows a decrease in our allowance for abatements from 175,000 to 120,000. So what Karen did was she reviewed our what we have for the number of years that we have that we need to carry for allowance for abatements and exemptions, and what we should carry for a total to cover us. And we were able to reduce that number to keep a conservative number in there to cover for that. So that took us from about, I think, a $63,000 surplus to $118,040. What I also want to, we're looking for kind of like a dashboard
Yeah.
of changes.
No, I appreciate what you've done here.
This
This
is
is
my effort
helpful. Yep.
at doing that. There's two, I thought it best to break it down in two ways. One is showing from the target budget to the preliminary budget. That's the first sheet, and it lines up with the columns that you'll see in the revenue expense sheet, because there's a column for target budget and preliminary budget. The last sheet in the handout is from the preliminary budget number to the recommended budget number as of today.
Great.
Any questions?
I'm nearing the hour where none of these numbers make any sense to me.
I might not be able to answer.
So I might have to punt and send you an email or something.
She'll be back next week.
Like I did a few minutes ago.
She'll also be back next week, so it might be,
Thank you very
Apologies,
much.
test
Thank
the
you very much,
policy.
though. This is,
Thank you.
this is
Just the
something
policy
of what I
of
had in
being
mind.
remote.
No, the governor just issued an order about the open meeting law.
Oh.
And that allowing remote participation by all members in public bodies. So there's more to be coming.
all right.
Well,
I don't, we don't really have a problem with social distancing, I'm telling you, there's nobody.
Big room.
It is-
I'll go to our respective corners.
There we go,
next away.
okay.
6.1 feet apart. We got plenty of room. Anyway,
I
shouldn't
just
be
wanted to
jumping.
add, I did receive an email from the town manager earlier this week in follow-up to my continual comment over the course of the last several weeks about remote participation in meetings, which has become extremely timely over the course of the last few weeks. She and the technology director and PAC are working on a plan, and I believe you're meeting with town council and the chairman of the board of selectmen early next week, and we'll be presenting something at the selectmen's meeting? Is
Yes.
that the plan? So thank you for your help on that.
You're welcome.
I have nothing, so,
No, I guess that, I don't have anything, so, is there any financial report? Great. Any comments from the committee? I know, Dave, you had one that you...
Yeah, just a committee report. TC Passios Design Committee met last evening with the architects for our kickoff meeting. Went very well. We went around the table, or initially they gave us their presentation as to what they see happening over the next few weeks. And then we went around the table with a series of questions that they had generated and responded to those questions with our thoughts. And they hope to finalize the contract for their services within the next week and hit the ground running very shortly after that, and have the initial scan, or not necessarily scan, but the initial walkthrough with their entire staff done by the 1st of April, or early April. So we should have something substantial to report on the progress by annual town meeting, and we will have at least one more full board committee meeting with the architect after they've had a chance to get into the building and get their teeth into the project and prepare for a town meeting presentation on where we're at that point.
Anyone else?
I do. I just wanted to bring to folks' attention, because it is very up-to-date. Anyone who has any interest in taking a deeper dive into some of the town's financial information, I would again refer people back to cleargov.com. That seems to be current through 2021, which I can't imagine how that is, but I think as you're putting in budget information, it must be loading, so.
I know the expenditure, well, the FY '20 budget, the expenditures that are there
Are up to date.
January of '20.
Right.
January of '20. I didn't know that the 2021 was.
2021 actually has a little button to, you know, it's probably at this point just taking some of the budget data. I don't know.
Yeah, because I didn't think that was doable yet.
I was looking at something. I'm not sure if I was supposed to be, but I wasn't yet. But I did, again, I just wanted to encourage people who are interested in taking a look at the town and the efforts of the town to be more transparent fiscally, and it also gives you the opportunity to look at where we stand with other communities of like size or locale. So, and again, that was something that was a priority at the beginning of the year, so I just wanted to check in at the end of the year to see how that was going. So, that was all.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. The next meeting is March 19th with presentations on administration, unclassified debt service and other.
And sewer,
Oh, and sewer.
I'm sorry.
No problem. And then on March 23rd, we'll have a Monday meeting as the committee to sort of share information on the budgets, our impressions.
Do we want to set a time for that? We're going to have to find a location, so, already, but,
Well, we've been doing 6:30, so I don't know.
it's an off-schedule meeting, and all we're talking about is the letter and just the summary.
What's the conflict with this location on the 20th?
Planning board,
I believe I saw that canceled on.
I think a public hearing was canceled. I'm not sure that that published, that closes the meeting, because I do believe at the Board of Selectmen meeting the other night, they talked about meeting together on the 23rd.
Okay.
So, 7. Oh, well, actually, let me backtrack. They usually start at 7. If they have too many public hearings, they will back it up to an earlier start, so I don't know. But the other thing is, I don't know whether there might be availability at Ritter, or the library, or someplace else. So, we'll just have to try to chase down a location. So,
We're not doing the 16th.
no, the 16th is
I
now.
apologize for that
Well,
confusion.
the Sodonic room at the library, maybe.
I'm sorry?
The Sodonic room
Yeah.
at the library.
Yeah, there's
Maybe-
2 meeting rooms at the library.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, we'll check in with Heather at the beginning of next week, and see what's or with Elaine, would Elaine know the meeting rooms availability, or? Town clerk is the best? Okay. But if it makes sense to check in with the library, just because that one, the library wouldn't be one of the meeting spaces that the town clerk would track, right?
No, those bookings are made through the library.
Okay, so we can check with the library.
I check the library a lot, so why don't I just book the Sodonic room if I can?
If you can, yes, and then just let Michelle know so she can post.
Yeah,
That would be good.
I'll let you know either way.
One of the last public meetings for this week is this meeting, so I'd just like to remind everybody that the Citizens Public Caucus is next Monday evening at 7 PM at the Turkey Hill Elementary School.
And we'll be prowling to see anybody who doesn't run for office who might be interested in joining the Finance Committee. Yes,
All right. I think that's it. Meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
I'm
I'm sorry, it's
so
on the
moved.
agenda. It says
Second.
right there.
And then you just do the all in favor and we're good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Well done, well done.
Wait to throw down some motions tonight, huh?
I never get to.